We're riffing, so why don't
All
you
right, let's riff.
what's going on, Zach? Why don't you give everybody like a brief introduction of who you are and maybe your hockey history?
Yeah, yeah, awesome. All right, I'm Zach Sitarz. My hockey history is I played all growing up. I'm in Minnesota right now, state of hockey. Um, and yeah, you're telling me that you saw me doing some acting skits for hockey content with my good friend Pat Shea, and that's my I got out of the hockey scene actually for probably 3 to 4 years. I graduated in 2016 and I only played a year of juniors after, and I kind of fell out of love with the game. But I was trying to be an actor, like a real actor out in LA during COVID. And it was hard. It was tough because no one was really doing anything during those, times and whatnot. So I somehow, some way landed a movie role in something called Way of the Warriors. It was a fictional hockey film about a high school team, and that's where I met Pat Shea. And then from there, we continued to record hockey content for his channel, and then it's grown tremendously. I think when I met him, he had 10K on Instagram, and now he's at like 50. And I think we've racked up like 10 million views together on these skits
Wow.
across TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube, anything that he posts on. I think we're over 10 million views together. So that's how I kind of stepped back into the hockey world, is because of Pat Shea and being in that hockey movie. So
That's cool. I think you've got two titles on IMDb, if I'm correct. Have you looked at yourself at IMDb at a while?
not in a while, no.
It had two titles listed for you, but can you kind of talk about your acting journey and kind of the things that you liked and maybe what made you decide to pursue your passion?
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to be an actor is because I watched the show Entourage when I was like, what, 12 years old, and then I've seen that, the Vincent Chase lifestyle. I've watched that show seven different times through. And when I kind of was like, I don't know if I want to play hockey anymore, I was like, I'm going to do acting because I had a connection. My cousin Tim Sitarz, he's one of the biggest, stunt performers or stunt men out in Hollywood. He's been in all the Marvel movies. He was in Daredevil. He has been in. He was, the funny story. A little side tangent. The If you've seen Revenant, yeah, with Leo, there's a bear scene in it, and he was a stuntman on the production, and there was supposed to be an animatronic bear, right? There was supposed to be like a robot bear, and it was malfunctioning and not moving correctly. So my cousin Tim put on a bear suit, and that's actually him in the movie.
That's
It's
so
like so.
sick.
So that's like I saw all this happening with him and whatnot, and he's connected to these people. So I said, all right, I'm moving to LA. I'm going to be an actor like Vincent Chase. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. It's 1% of actors actually like make a good living, and then the rest is just kind of like part time, or like, it's just kind of a fizzled out dream. And I saw that when I went out to LA. It was not easy to get any work like being an actor. A lot of people just try and they're, doing their other jobs, and eventually life goes by, and you're not in the 25 to 30-year-old range that they're looking for these, big actors to blow up. And I was still under that. I was still, 22, 23 when I went out there. But something happened where that movie that I actually got a role in was a hockey movie, because I got the email for it and whatnot, and I did my sizzle reel and sent in my audition and whatnot. But then I also clipped in some crazy goals that I had. Like I had like some highlight reel goals that were like pretty good actually. I might send them to you so you can clip them in this. But then the director and the producer hit me up and was like, "All right, so here's how this is gonna go. We can't teach actors to skate like you, but we can teach skaters to act. Because like to skate and like really be like a high level and look like you know what you're doing on ice, you can't just like learn
Yeah,
that in a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? That's
right.
years. That's your entire life of dedication to like get to where you're at. But they thought they could basically teach hockey players how to act. Similar in Miracle, those were actually hockey players. Like OC played for Boston College at some point, I'm pretty sure. And so they went through the same approach as Miracle, because there was some people involved that made the Miracle movie that were also making this Way of the Warriors movie. So it was kind of like intertwined with some experience. And Chris Nelson out in Hollywood, he's great guy. He did all the stunts for Miracle on Ice. He hung out with all the boys like every day shooting that movie, and he was our guy for like on ice choreography. So that
That's sick.
that was fun. That was fun. But I'll tell you, the movie never came out. Never came out. It's
But but the experience that you got from it though, and it's I mean, that's what you wanted,
yeah,
right? You wanted to
that,
like
yeah,
dip your
that,
toes in it.
yeah, exactly. And I got to be on a real movie set. I got to be one of the main characters. And I met Pat Shea there, and so what I on the Bench Boys too. I became good. They were actually in the movie too as the coaches. So I got to meet great friends from that experience. And actually, Pat Shea and the On the Bench Boys were at this cabin like a couple of years ago. We all came here together because we met on the movie set, and it was just kind of a heartbreak when it didn't come out because it never got finished because of the pandemic. Like there was a bunch of restrictions that went into place like week 3 of shooting, and then someone may or may not have gotten COVID on set, and then it just basically broke. Everyone went home and it never started back up. I bet you we shot like 40% of the movie.
Wow.
It's a bummer, but it's I I have reason to believe that they still want to make it. I've been in contact with them a little bit. Actually in the last week or so, we just got an email though saying that there's a possibility for the end of March, but we'll just see. It's just one of those kind of dreams where even my cousin said there's more of the movies that you shoot in Hollywood won't come out. So don't get heartbroken over one. And I was like, man, this might have been the one though. This might have been the one. And he's just like, no, you can't get attached to that because it's just kind of how it goes. Could come out 10 years from now. I don't know. That'd be awesome. But so
Yeah. And
that's 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 what I've been doing.
it sounds a lot like the same thing hockey players deal with. Like it when you were talking about, I went out there, it's harder to get a job than you think, and these guys, the lifestyle's different than you think, and they're looking for a certain type of person in 25 to certain, or you don't fit it. That sounds a lot like what a lot of hockey players that are trying to play professional go through as well when they're trying to find themselves. So I thought that was really interesting. Can you tell everybody what you've been up to recently, or maybe what you've been investing your time
Yeah,
into recently?
sure. I started two real estate companies. One's a property management company that manages short-term rentals. Like I know a lot of people with cabins that are only there 30% of the time, maybe just in the summer, a couple of weeks. So I turn them into Airbnbs and then rent them out on all the big platforms and manage the cleaning, booking, and whatnot. And then also I started a company that is a software company with real estate that lets you invest into pieces of real estate from a young age. Real estate is one of the hardest things to invest in if you don't have a lot of money. You can invest in like REITs and syndicates and stuff, but you have no control. You don't know what you're investing in. They're just going and buying a bunch of houses in Section 8, and they're gonna, raise the rent. That's how you're gonna make money. This actually is a software that's going to allow someone with $100 to $200 to buy a little piece of real estate. And say college kid, if a college kid starts doing it, by the time he's 30, he might own a couple houses through us at different pieces in different parts of the world. So I got into the real estate system, and that's just kind of where I took things. So
I love it. Do you have any tips for people that are creators right now, or maybe, finding out that you're in real estate? Anybody that's interested in real estate, do you have any tips for them? Or you can vibe on either of those. I think I have people that listen to the podcast that do real estate as a side hustle, especially now that I'm in my
mm,
30s. I know a lot of people the last couple of years have rental properties that they're looking to, cash flow or equity or figure out what they're doing.
for
But
sure.
I also have like hockey, people that make hockey content that listen to this as well. So any tips for either of those crowds?
Uh, yeah, I guess like you said, like real estate is a side hustle. That's the interesting thing that I've learned where realtors are either full time or they're very part time. And so I guess if you really want to get into like real estate, investing is the into short-term rentals is kind of the biggest market that I see working because everyone wants to work remote, everyone wants to travel. Our generation is going to come up And would you rather stay at a house that you have to yourself, or would you rather stay at a hotel that's going to charge you X, Y, Z for, you know, whatever? It's those are the kind of things that I've learned personally, is just like the housing market is an interesting beast too, because it was a year and a half ago the hottest thing that anybody would talk about. But now I know
Mhm.
realtors that haven't sold a house in over a year. So it's like that's why it's their side hustle, because they have to go get a new job. So or another job. So it's just an interesting, but I will say real estate's the hardest asset that you can invest in. To work in real estate is different than investing in it, right? So if you're investing in real estate, you're not actually a broker or a realtor or a property manager. Investing into real estate is one of there's a chart that I have that it just is, you know,
Right.
houses that were built 30 years ago and sold for 75,000 are selling for 450,000 today. So it's just investing into real estate, if you can, at any level, is probably the smartest thing that you can learn, and I'm still learning myself. So yeah, that's kind of the real estate side.
L- Love it. What about tips for maybe somebody that does like acting and plays hockey? You have any tips for that crowd?
Yes, Instagram Reels. You can do promotions. It depends what you're doing. If you want to be a creator, just start with what you truly believe in. Post on all platforms, and also track analytics. If you're not tracking, you're gambling. That's kind of like a quote. So it's like, if like on your podcast right now, make sure if you have it, release it on iTunes or what Apple, Spotify, YouTube, the big ones. Make sure you track and see which ones are actually watching the video content, which ones are watching just the audio. Like, tracking is very key when it comes to content, I personally think. Making sure and so you can adjust too, right? You can adjust to, okay, 99% of my people are listening and not watching. Maybe I'll put more effort and money towards trying to get guests and buy better microphones rather than buying cameras that no one's going to watch or something like that.
That's actually really insightful. I'm dealing with that now. Do you spend the extra money on like cameras and all this stuff? And what I'm finding out is it actually doesn't really matter. I was like worried about it before. I had like a little gap. I was like, I'll just spend the time and maybe grab a couple cameras because at the time everybody was doing like the two angle, you know,
Yeah, so
and
that's
so,
actually interesting. You kind of just flared something up that I think you should know this if you're dealing with that. So, do you know Derek More Plates, More Dates?
yeah,
Yeah, he exposed the Liver King. Everyone knows Derek now. He's been on Rogan so many times. I've been following Derek for years now.
yeah, me too.
And people will actually ask, what is that thing behind you?
Yeah.
What is that? What is that thing? And he won't tell anybody because they keep talking about it. He doesn't. He even said, I think it was it on Rogan this last time or a different podcast, that he could afford to buy the best cameras, full studio, but there's something about just recording in front of that little wood wall, no
Right.
headphones, just a camera, and people just kind of like, they really love that. He never switched up. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, he could afford all the best stuff, but then it's like, okay, now you're kind of changing your brand and then how you came up, and he just kept it the same, and it's worked very, very well. So there's something to that, where it's like, okay, I see you have an Easton hockey stick behind you and some bottles of whatever.
Yeah.
that might
Original senator.
that people might just be like, oh, this dude really knows. He's got the Easton from the fucking 2002 Cup run. Like, that might be like why people watch you. That might be why
Yeah.
people, like, you just kind of rooted to how you started, and that's enough to. You don't have to go get the 4K. You don't have to have the studio. You don't have to have the soundproof wall hangings. It's just kind of like, however you started. I think if it's successful, you stay to it. But if it's not successful, you have to make adjustments, along the way. So that's kind of that.
Chris Williamson is another creator that does that. His podcast and vlog is getting really big right now. He does the same thing. His background is just his apartment, but you realize how much it doesn't matter when you're listening to the content or how many people are listening to it on a platform that's audio only, or you know. And it's like imposter syndrome. It's like these other psychological things. Stephen Pressfield and Rick Rubin just talked about like resistance in creation and resistance in art, and this idea of like like talent is not what it's about. Like talent is BS. It's like, are you able to fight this resistance, whatever it is, like the voice that's saying, you don't create this, it doesn't look right, or it's not the vision you have in your head. And sometimes just showing up for the muse, they'll
Yeah, so
show
some
up for you.
I think the candid stuff is the best way to go about things, because I saw that you sent me some like, okay, man, and like I'm gonna ask you probably about these things. Da, da, da. I skimmed it, but I'm like, I'm not gonna actually write them down because like I want to actually think about it on the spot. Like I think the
Yeah.
candid stuff is amazing, where it's like sometimes it non-scripted, because like people tell if you're acting, people like the natural interactions. I've never met you, you've never met me, but now we're friends.
Right.
So yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
You mentioned the alcohol, so here's actually what I'm going to show you what it is. I'm glad that you mentioned it because this is why I have it back there. It's hockey wine, and it's like it's
Oh,
aged and it's vintage. So this one is Mike Richter, and so it's like a cool, vintage of a hockey wine. And it's NHL alumni certified. It was something they did. And this is Rod Gobert. But yeah, so again, you're right. Hockey, I put it there because I'm like, somebody's going to ask me about it. I actually don't drink. I've been sober for 3 years, like not
wow.
drinking. So, but it's still cool. And then I've got some other commemorative bottles for hockey teams I've done. Uh,
That's pretty cool. So is that your brand, your company that you make?
no, again, just like hockey shit, like
Okay,
random
okay.
hockey shit,
Look, it could be a company that you do start where they
I
might be
like it. There you
interested
go.
in your brand.
Wine's hot and
So,
dry wine, hot.
so do you are you okay with talking about alcohol and why
Yeah.
you are
Oh yeah.
sobes,
Yeah.
as they say?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So it started 3 years ago with Sober October. My birthday's at the end of September. I went really hard for like a birthday weekend. I was going through like a breakup at the time and some other like personal life identity stuff that everybody goes through in their mid 30s. And I was like, you know what? Sober October, cool opportunity to not drink. And then what I found was I got through the 30 days and I was like, wow, I never really liked drinking before. I felt different. I was always, off. I always liked consuming cannabis more than drinking, but I found myself drinking after hockey and drinking in games and all this stuff. And so 30 days and then 60 days. And then next thing it was like, okay, I've already gone 90 days here. And it was at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, start of the pandemic happens, and I was like, okay, well, this is a great opportunity to not like feed an addiction if I'm just going to be sitting at home all the time. And you blink your eyes, the next thing you know, it's 3 years. I still like
Okay,
wine. I'll drink wine, special occasions, like birthday parties and holidays and stuff. But I don't think I've had beer since then. And the rise of non-alcoholic beverages and the whole dry January over like the last 3 years has been huge. So more of my friends now don't drink, and they're like, you know, how did you do it?
okay.
And then now they're like, oh, I'm gonna do dry January. Any tips?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I do those things too. I'm a religious Rogan listener, so him, Bert Kreischer, Ari Shafir, they always do sober October, and I did it with them this year for the first time in a couple years, and it was I did exactly what you did. So October 1st turned into December 31st, and then it was New Year's. I didn't
Yep.
drink for almost 2.5 months. Was that October, November, almost 3 months. Three months I didn't have a sip, but then it came to New Year's, and I drank, and I was just like, I don't know if I like this. But then it kind of rolled over into January, where I was like having some wine and stuff, and I was like, I had to put it down again. I
Yeah.
don't know. I just don't think alcohol is the God. I could talk about this all day. Where cannabis is the thing that was illegal because of political stuff back in the day, and these misinterpretations of it. And then alcohol is like actually poison that kills people, and it's the only, substance that you can buy legally. And then because like during the pandemic they didn't shut down liquor stores, because if they shut down liquor stores, people would literally fall over and die. It's one of the
Yeah.
only chemicals that you're fatally addicted to.
Hmm.
So it's just super interesting, where it's like I'm not a huge alcohol guy either. Like, and I go through these periods where I do it and I'm not happy doing it. It's interesting. So I don't know.
Yeah,
That's some
and
of my thoughts.
there's so much clarity that's came out of it over the last couple of years. One of them is like there's two different things. There's drinking, like the social drinking, and then there's like getting drunk, the, the drinking to like feel effects thing. And the hardest thing obviously was the social aspect because everybody goes out to drinks and meeting and like
Do you have a
navigating
girl?
that. Not at the moment.
See, that's the hard part, where it's like sometimes you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I would be at the bar maybe meeting some chicks, but
Or or first date idea. Like I still say, hey, meet me for drinks. Like you know.
exactly. But then it's just like I don't drink,
Right.
and
Yes, exactly.
then yeah.
But people are starting to appreciate the discipline because it's just like having like a physically fit body. Like
Hmm.
people are like, God, I wish I had the discipline to do that or whatever. Like,
And when I do drink, you can tell. That's it. That's the whole thing. Like if I go on like a month vacation or whatever, and I'm drinking and kind of not working out every single day, like I do. I'm 7 days a week kind of guy. If
hmm
I'm drinking a lot, then I'm not, and you can tell the difference. Like you can really tell.
Interesting.
Oh, you're bloated. Oh, you like I don't know if other people can tell, but I personally am like I'm not my best self right now.
Very
It's
interesting.
yeah, it's one of those things. But then cannabis, I'm a advocate of that, obviously. Um, it's just normal life. Like there's no hangover, there's no bloating, there's no poison. It's just a chemical makeup that I don't know. It's
Do
illegal
you,
right now in some states.
do you believe in like intuition? Do you believe in kind of like knowing, having like the gut intuition? You ever like have that about something and turn out to be right? You believe that's real at all?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's almost like manifesting in a sense.
I guess so. So here's my story. Like with cannabis, I always felt better with it as an athlete. Like I knew that after a practice or after a game, it would make me feel better, and I didn't care that like it was illegal or stigmatized or nobody else did it, or if they found out you did it, you get in trouble. Because I was like, I know that there's something to this, and it's not in my head. And that was like however many years ago, and now it's like becoming so much more mainstream. Is like, no, your body has an endocannabinoid system, and these chemicals are need to be present, and they're in everything, and super
Yep.
fascinating.
Yep.
And even
The generational gap is where like I had a problem with this, where I got caught smoking cannabis for the first time young in high school, and it was the end of the world. It was literally the end of the world, right?
yep,
But I continued, and I was more of a smoker than a drinker. And in the long run, that's proved in that gut feeling that you're talking about to be completely valid, because now, the people that were looking down on me for doing cannabis are now doing it. And then there's also people that, you know,
it's
didn't
medical
love
now.
the idea. Exactly. And there's certain people in my life that really gave me a lot of shit for using it and now use it, or also would say I'd rather have you light a joint than drink a bottle.
Yep. Or and
And
I'm
the tides have turned. The tides have
100%.
turned. And that gut feeling that you're talking about is very accurate. Where it's like I don't know if I felt that, because I didn't really think about it that way. But like it's just kind of funny to what's the word I'm looking for?
It comes back around. It's
Yeah,
I
yeah.
100% agree. And I'm gonna have
It,
hopefully Riley Cote. I'm gonna chat with him hopefully within the next week or two and drop a podcast. And same thing, I sent him a list of questions because I'm also a firm believer in like microdosing and mushrooms and
yep,
psychedelics and
yep, yes, sir.
all these other different types of things that we've never even thought about because of the stigma attached, but there's something to it. And as I got sober, I also worked on like my mental health. So like I had before this all happened, I had like a great job, like making close to six figures, like, but I went from being an athlete to sitting at a desk all day. And it was like my health deteriorated and I wasn't doing what I loved and I didn't feel great. And so I was lucky enough to like take a step back and like use the money saved up to like go on kind of a sabbatical. And that
Mm,
was like 5 years ago and I've been retired ever since. But focusing on yourself on all aspects of your mental health and like your spiritual and physical health, one of the things that everybody talks about is psychedelics. And so like I wanted to get Riley Cote on to talk about like how does that, as somebody that played at the highest level of hockey, like, and then has transitioned out of it and found these other things too. Everybody talks about like PTSD and anxiety and depression, which we all maybe struggle with. At least
mhm.
like recently with Bell Let's Talk, it's become like a huge thing in the league. But like, is there something better than what we're doing now? And can we have a
Mm.
conversation about it? I'm all for psychedelics, like even like non-psychedelic compounds from mushrooms like lion's mane and cordyceps, like
Yeah, yeah.
fascinating.
My buddy, and one of my partners in my company is able to give me knowledge enough to basically about the lion's mane and then the psilocybin. There's little
Yeah.
capsules that you can get. It's You're not getting high. You are essentially restructuring your brain in a good way where there's a lot of studies that go into microdosing every other day at like a point 0.2 cap, and it just really helps you. It really helps your anxiety. You're like any problems that you may have that Western medicine that could be like some antidepressants that might try to help, but like a microdose like every other day at such a low level that you don't even know it is so big. It's so
Yeah.
big. I actually have done it the last month, and it was a good experience for me.
Yeah, and
So
I've been an evangelical for it. I've been turning on a lot of former professional athletes to trying it for the purpose of like neurogenesis, like it regrows neurons in your brain and these synapses that as you age, and hockey's such a violent sport anyways, like everybody talks about CTE and these other things, but there's really only a couple of compounds that are shown to regrow brain cells, and it's like
yeah,
psilocybin and lion's
that's
mane.
exactly what I mean. That's exactly yeah, there's a like a your cerebral cortex or something is like rewired back to the way it's supposed to be if there's been damage from Adderall, the X, Y, and Z. Like, but yeah, I've looked into it a lot, and I did my first period of microdosing every other day, actually less than, and I noticed a lot of difference in your anxiety level and your drive. And it's cool. I'm no medical expert, but for people that have anxiety or ADHD kind of symptoms, the microdose of lion's mane and psilocybin together is something they should look into, I believe.
I agree. And one thing that I found that is really important is not identity crisis, but everybody goes through something in their, 20s and 30s where it's like, who am I? Where do I fit in? And most of us have never had like an ego check before. And I think that psychedelics are like the greatest ego check for you that makes you realize like there's something bigger than me. The voice in my head is not like reality. And
Mm.
these chemicals and the way your brain reacts is in your perception is how you ultimately view reality. And like once you understand that, it's like okay, it opens
I've
up a whole new
I've
paradigm.
I've had that where a heroic dose of psilocybin really makes you think about, okay, I'm a little part of this world. I'm just going to do my part and do everything the way it's supposed to be. But I've actually listened to Bradley Martin. He's a bodybuilder on YouTube, and he just did an ayahuasca ceremony in Peru, I believe. And that's like the top notch of like, all right, psychedelic experience. And he said after like 15 days, like it changed his life, but then you slowly start to slip back into what was before. So that's why I think microdosing just every other day over a long periods of time may be more effective, because I'm terrified to go do ayahuasca or peyote.
An ego thing. I think the biggest thing that I tell people that I got out of any of these compounds is you feel like you're gonna die and you have to be okay with it, but then you don't. Like that's where the growth comes. Like the moment comes, you're like, oh, this is it. This is the all it is, and it's over and it's done. And you have to like rectify it in your own subconscious, and then it doesn't happen, and you're like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that I think Colorado has some studies for psilocybin to be legal soon.
Yep.
Other than that, I haven't heard much about it. I know Nevada. It's just I wish the process of government regulation was more streamlined and like what are we 15 years into the weed business and I'm pretty sure like what 20 some states are legalized like
Yeah, Missouri this last weekend just actually opened recreational. So,
really.
yes,
Okay,
just
good for
within the
you.
last
Good for you
like
down there.
week. Well, yeah, I mean, but you look at the numbers before it was illegal. Us in Kentucky were the biggest hemp crop states, and now we sell soybeans and we have the least amount of farmers in the Midwest. And so, like, part of me looks back at that and it's like that Missouri is natural to be in this business and to grow this because we have such a rich history of doing it. I mean, like, even up until World War II, like all the parachutes that were made, you know, but mostly in the 1800s. It's fascinating how society changes, and I think psychedelics fit into that. Like you have to be okay with like realizing the voice and the story and the things that you tell yourself in your head are okay are actually wrong and not real and made
Mm.
up.
One thing that I do like though is I heard Theo Vaughn say this one time. He goes, "Don't wait for everything in your life to be okay to live your life." Right? Where it's like there's a lot of things that occur, every single day, but that builds you as a person and your character and the tools that you use along the way. That's awesome and whatnot, but just live your life to like the absolute way that you would want to do it, and don't think about the outside noise of like what people think about you. That's a lesson I've learned where it's like you can't really like listen to what other people say, because if you don't, then you're the only one that matters. And then if you do that route, whatever you're doing, if it's making you money or if it's just content like what you're doing right now on a podcast, like that is the biggest key to life, I think, is not waiting for everything to be okay to live your life.
I love that.
That yeah,
That's deep. Let's walk it back. We only got a couple minutes left before
yeah,
we're out of here. So, where can people find you or follow you, or do you have any way for people to connect with you or follow what you're doing?
yeah, for sure. Zach Sitarz on Instagram. Um, that's really like the only socials. I just have my Instagram, my
Do you have
Facebook, same name.
any projects or anything
Actually,
coming up?
yes, sir. This I'll just grab it right here. So this is my company that I've started. It's if you have a cabin, cottage, or any kind of vacation home, Luxury Nights will take care of the bookings. We'll take care of the cleanings. We'll take care of the licensings. We're gonna have the headache taken away from short-term rentals, and that's exactly why it'll be successful. I guess I don't
Love
know.
it. Love it. Love it.